Virgo, you bled light when they thought you only leaked efficiency. That is the sentence that will not leave me. It arrived at dawn, before the coffee had finished dripping, before the world had decided what kind of day it would pretend to be. It arrived whole. And I knew, the way a channel knows, that it was not a metaphor, it was a medical report. It was the exact description of what happened inside their chest when they saw it. The side of you that does not appear on your resume, the side that does not organize the pantry or arrive 5 minutes early or apologize for taking up space, the side that is ancient, feral, and precisely calibrated, the side that made their jaw drop so hard they felt the click in their ears, the pop of a worldview dislocating from its socket. They never expected it. How could they? You had trained them gently, thoroughly, almost invisibly, to expect something else entirely. Let me take you back to the moment before the moment. Not because you need to relive it, but because you need to understand what you triggered in another human being when you finally stopped editing. You were in a room, it does not matter which room. It could have been a kitchen at 2 a.m, the blue glow of the refrigerator the only witness. It could have been a car parked under a street lamp that had begun its slow, theatrical flicker toward death. It could have been a conference room where the presentation had ended and everyone else had filed out, leaving you alone with the debris of someone else's ambition. Wherever it was, the lighting was wrong for a revelation. The setting was too ordinary. The script did not call for transcendence. And that is exactly why it landed the way it did. You were tired. Not the performative tired that people wear like a badge of productivity, but the deep mineral tired of someone who has been holding a shape for so long that the muscles have forgotten how to relax. You were tired of being the one who notices, the one who adjusts, the one who carries the ambient anxiety of the room like a waiter carrying a tray of glasses that no one else ordered. And in that tiredness, something slipped. Not a mistake, not a breakdown. A slip of the mask, yes, but the mask was never your face. It was a courtesy, a translation. A simplified version of your software that could run on their outdated hardware. You sighed, or you laughed, or you looked at something, a painting, a text message, a stain on the carpet with an expression that was not confusion, not judgment, but pure, unfiltered recognition. You saw through it. You saw through the thing they thought was solid, and in that seeing, you became someone else. Not someone else, you became more you, the rare you, the you that lives below the frost line. And they saw it, their jaw dropped. Literally, the mandible unhinged by a fraction. The lips parted. The breath stopped mid-cycle because the nervous system had to reroute all available resources to processing what had just entered the room. It was not sexual, though sex might have been nearby. It was not aggressive, though power was absolutely present. It was the shock of encountering a phenomenon in what they had classified as a domesticated landscape. It was the bird watcher seeing a dragon. It was the accountant finding a unicorn in the ledger. It was the moment when the person who thought they had inventoried every room of your house suddenly discovered a door behind the bookshelf, and behind that door, a cathedral. You did not notice their jaw drop. That is the exquisite comedy of it. You were too busy being yourself to perform the reaction for them. You were too occupied with the internal weather of your own truth to check the thermometer of their awe. And that obliviousness, that complete unself-conscious immersion in your own frequency is what made it devastating. If you had performed it, they would have filed it under charisma, under seduction, under the known category of people trying to impress me. But because you had no idea you were doing it, because it leaked out of you like a color you cannot see in yourself, but that blinds everyone else, they had no defense. They had no file. They had no precedent. They never expected this because they had spent months, maybe years, constructing a model of you that was useful but not accurate. They had built a dollhouse version of your psyche, neat rooms, labeled drawers. Here is where she keeps her kindness. Here is where he files his loyalty. Here is the compartment for practicality, and here is the small, well-ventilated chamber where feelings are allowed to breathe for exactly 15 minutes before being recycled into productivity. They thought you were a Swiss watch. Beautiful, precise, predictable. They had no idea you were a geode. And then the hammer fell. Not their hammer, yours. The internal pressure that you had been containing, the tectonic force of everything you do not say, everything you do not show, everything you have been told is too much, too wild, too inconvenient for the operating hours of polite society, that pressure found a hairline fracture in the rock. And instead of leaking out as a sigh or a complaint or another helpful suggestion, it emerged as something else entirely. What was it exactly? I cannot tell you with a single word, because it is not a word, it is a state, but I can describe its architecture. It is the side of you that knows things without being told. Not the analytical knowing that you are famous for, not the research, the cross-referencing, the meticulous accumulation of evidence. This is the knowing that arrives like weather, the knowing that makes you turn your head a full second before the glass shatters. The knowing that makes you say no to an opportunity that looks perfect on paper because your gut has already read the final chapter and closed the book. This knowing does not ask for permission. It does not submit a report. It simply occupies you. And when it does, your face changes. The geometry of your features rearranges. Your eyes become older. Your voice drops half a register. You speak, and the words are ordinary, but the frequency underneath them carries the weight of prophecy. They saw that, and their jaw dropped because they realized in that instant that they had been speaking to the ambassador. They had never met the sovereign. Let me explain the rarity of what you revealed, because this is the part that matters most. This is the part that will keep them awake for months. Most people who carry the Virgo signature in their chart spend their lives perfecting the art of usefulness. They learn early that love is earned through improvement, that safety is purchased with competence, that their value is directly proportional to their ability to make the world run more smoothly, and so they become experts at the invisible labor. They become the backbone, the fixer, the one who remembers the thing that everyone else forgets. They become so good at this role that the world forgets to ask what else they might be. The world looks at them and sees a utility, a function, a beautiful machine. But you are not a machine. You are a mineral formation that took 10,000 years of pressure to create And under certain conditions, conditions of extreme honesty, extreme exhaustion, or extreme passion, the mineral reveals its true structure. Not the structure that was imposed by the mold, but the structure that grew in the dark, atom by atom, choice by choice, silence by silence. The side they saw was your wildness. And I do not mean the wildness of parties or rebellion or the cheap theatrics of chaos. I mean the wildness of absolute integrity, the wildness of a creature that cannot be domesticated because it was never tamed to begin with, the wildness of a forest that looks like a garden from the path, but that becomes untraceable wilderness the moment you step past the sign that says, "Do not enter." You stepped past the sign, not with your feet, with your presence. You entered a territory inside yourself that you usually keep gated, and the gate was open just long enough for the light to escape. And that light was not soft. It was not gentle. It was not the warm glow of a candle. It was the hard, cold, ultraviolet radiation of absolute truth. It sterilized their illusions. It burned away the dust on their retinas. And for a moment, maybe only a moment, but a moment is enough to rewire a soul they saw you as you are. Rare. Rare does not mean unusual. Unusual is a flavor. Rare is a frequency. Rare means that what they encountered does not have a market equivalent. It cannot be replicated. It cannot be purchased. It cannot be studied and reproduced in a lab. It exists in exactly one copy, and that copy is you, breathing in a kitchen at 2 a.m, or staring out a car window, or saying something so quietly that they had to lean in to hear it. And when they leaned in, they fell. They fell into the understanding that they had been underestimating the depth of the ocean because the surface was so calm. And here is the cruelty of it, the beautiful, necessary cruelty. Now that they have seen it, they cannot unsee it. They cannot go back to the dollhouse model. They cannot return to the comfortable fiction that you are the helpful one, the reliable one, the one who will always be there to pick up the pieces because you are so good at organizing pieces. They know now. They know that underneath the organization is a chaos so profound it looks like order. They know that underneath the helpfulness is a power so absolute it does not need to dominate anyone to prove itself. They know that underneath the modesty is a self-possession that makes their most confident moments look like auditioning. You did not show them this side on purpose. That is what makes it authentic. That is what makes it lethal. If you had performed it, they could have dismissed it as a trick. But because it emerged from the crack in your fatigue, because it slipped out while you were not watching yourself, it carried the seal of reality. It was not a presentation, it was an exposure. And exposures change people. Think about what happens to a person who has spent their life collecting rare things, rare wines, rare watches, rare experiences. They develop a palate. They develop an instinct for authenticity. They can spot a forgery from across the room because something in their nervous system registers the absence of soul. And then, one day, they encounter something that is not just rare, it is singular. It is the original of which everything else is a copy, and the encounter ruins them. It ruins their ability to enjoy the collection. It ruins their tolerance for the almost real. From that moment on, everything else tastes like ash. That is what you did to them. You ruined their tolerance for the ordinary, not by trying, not by declaring yourself special, simply by being, for one unguarded moment, exactly what you are. They are walking around now with a phantom memory. It haunts them. In meetings, they look at other people and they compare unconsciously, constantly, relentlessly. Do they have it? They do not even know what it is, but they know you have it. They know that in a room full of 1,000 faces, yours is the only one that ever made them feel like they were standing on the edge of a cliff they did not know was there, looking down into a depth that had no bottom. They never expected it because you do not dress like danger. You do not announce yourself like a storm. You arrive on time. You bring the snacks. You fix the typo in the group email. You are, by every external measure, the most manageable person in the room, and that is your camouflage. That is how the rare thing hides in plain sight. It does not glitter. It does not roar. It organizes the bookshelf and waits for the right eyes. The right eyes looked, and what they saw was not a bookshelf, they saw a portal. Let me describe the architecture of this rare side more precisely, because you need to know what you are carrying so that you stop apologizing for its weight. This side of you is the alchemist, not the chemist. The chemist measures and mixes and expects a predictable reaction. The alchemist puts lead in the crucible and expects it to become something that does not exist yet. This side of you does not solve problems. It transmutes them. It does not fix what is broken. It recognizes that the break was a birth. It looks at the disaster, the failure, the ending, the loss, and instead of reaching for the duct tape, it reaches for the seed. It plants something in the wound. It has no patience for restoration because it is too busy with creation. This side of you is also the destroyer, not the vandal, the destroyer. It knows when a structure has completed its purpose. It knows when a relationship has become a mausoleum. It knows when a job has become a coffin. And it does not negotiate with the dead. It does not hold vigils for expired possibilities. It burns them quietly, thoroughly, without malice, because malice is a waste of energy. It burns them because ash is the only honest fertilizer. They saw this. They saw the destroyer and the alchemist holding hands inside your rib cage. They saw that you could be kinder than anyone they had ever met and simultaneously more ruthless. They saw that your compassion does not extend to enabling, that your patience has a terminal point, that your love, when it is real, is not a warm bath, it is a refiner's fire. And they realized with a clarity that made their hands shake that they had been playing with matches in a room full of gasoline, thinking they were the dangerous one. You are not dangerous. You are elemental. There is a difference. Dangerous implies intent. Elemental implies nature. A volcano does not hate the village. It simply is. And your nature, when it is fully expressed, is as indifferent to their comfort as gravity is to the complaint of the fallen vase you do not mean to disrupt. You simply do not know how to be small enough to avoid disruption. And in that moment of unguarded truth, you stopped trying. That is what dropped their jaw, not a performance, not a threat, the cessation of effort, the end of translation. The moment when you decided unconsciously that the cost of making yourself legible was higher than the cost of being misunderstood. And in that moment, you spoke a dialect of yourself that has no Rosetta Stone. You spoke in your native tongue, and their ears, tuned only to the common language of transaction and performance, heard music they did not know existed. They are still hearing it. It is playing on a loop in the back of their mind when they try to sleep. It is the soundtrack to their shower thoughts, their commute, their attempts to focus on work that suddenly feels meaningless. They are trying to find the frequency again. They are replaying the tape, looking for the moment, trying to isolate the exact second when the room changed temperature. They think if they can just figure out what triggered it, they can trigger it again. They can bottle it. They can own it. They cannot. This side of you does not perform on command. It is not a party trick. It is not a weapon you deploy to win arguments or seduce admirers. It is the part of you that belongs to something older than your personality. It is the part of you that signed a contract with the universe before you were born, agreeing to carry a specific frequency of truth in a world that is optimized for lies, and it only emerges when the conditions are right, when the noise is low enough, when your guard is down enough, when the moment is honest enough to deserve it. You cannot manufacture it. You cannot plan it. You can only stop preventing it. And that, Virgo, is your work now. Not to become more impressive, not to learn how to drop jaws on purpose. Your work is to stop building the walls so high that the light cannot escape. Your work is to trust that the side of you that made their jaw drop is not an aberration. It is not a glitch. It is the signal. Everything else is static. You have spent so long believing that your value lies in your ability to be helpful, to be correct, to be the one who makes everything better. And those things are true. They are real. They are part of your gift, but they are not the whole gift. They are the wrapping. The rare thing is the content. The rare thing is the part of you that does not fix, does not organize, does not improve. The part of you that simply is, that witnesses, that recognizes, that burns with a clarity so absolute it scares people who have built their lives on comfortable ambiguity. You are rare because most people compromise that clarity before it reaches their eyes. They learn to blur their vision so they can get along. They learn to soften their edges so they fit into the available space. They learn to want what is offered because asking for what they actually need seems impolite. You learned those lessons too. You took the classes. You passed the exams. You became so good at fitting in that you almost convinced yourself the available space was the right size. But it is not. It has never been. And on that ordinary night, in that unremarkable room, your body knew it. Your body rejected the container. Not with drama, not with declaration, with a look, with a breath, with a silence that was so full it pushed all the air out of the room. And they saw it. They saw the real size of you. They saw that you are not a desk accessory. You are a phenomenon. Now they are walking around with the memory of a phenomenon they cannot explain. They tell their friends there is something about them. They cannot say what. They try to describe it, and the words turn to sand in their mouths. They are different. They are not like other people. These are the phrases of someone who has seen a color that does not exist in the standard spectrum. They are trying to name the unnameable, and the unnameable is you being yourself without permission. You need to know that this side of you is not going away. It is not a phase. It is not a mood. It is the bedrock beneath the garden. And the more you try to suppress it, the more it will leak out at inconvenient moments, cracking the foundations of relationships that were only built to house the smaller version of you. You cannot pour a cathedral into a garden shed. You cannot live a rare life inside common expectations. Something has to give, and what gives, when you finally stop editing, is not you. It is the illusion that you were ever small enough to fit. Their jaw dropped because they recognized in that flash of your unguarded truth that they had been living in a world of copies, and you were the original, not better, not worse. Just real in a way that makes everything else feel like rehearsal. You were not trying to be profound. You were not trying to be mysterious. You were simply exhausted enough to stop translating. And in that exhaustion, you became electric. Do not try to recreate the moment. Do not try to perform the thing that happened by accident. Instead, remove the conditions that make accidents necessary. Stop editing so much. Stop translating so much. Stop apologizing for the space your truth requires. The people who are built for you will not be intimidated by your size. They will be expanded by it. The people who are not built for you will fall away, and that falling is not loss. It is ecology. It is the natural clearing of forest floor so that the rare thing has room to grow. You are the rare thing. Let them adjust. Let them recalibrate. Let them walk around with their jaw still tender from the drop, trying to find words for a color they have never seen. That is not your problem. Your problem is simpler and more difficult. You must learn to live without the mask. Not because the world deserves your transparency, but because you deserve to stop suffocating. You deserve to occupy the full volume of your own soul. You deserve to look in the mirror and see the same thing they saw. Not the helpful one, not the organized one, the radiant one, the ancient one, the one that makes jaws drop and hearts stutter and lies dissolve like sugar and acid. That is you. That has always been you. The rest was just practice. The rest was just rehearsal for the moment when you would finally forget to hide. So forget. Forget on purpose. Let the side they saw become the side you live with. Let the rare frequency become your default setting. Let the world learn your real name, the one that is too large for the birth certificate, too bright for the office, too wild for the dinner party. Let them learn it. Let them say it. Let them choke on it if they must. You were never meant to be easy to explain. You were meant to be witnessed. And someone did. Someone saw. Their jaw dropped. Their world shifted. And nothing for them will ever be the same. Make sure that for you, nothing is ever the same either. Not because of their reaction, but because you have finally seen yourself through their eyes, and you cannot pretend anymore that you are only what you have been pretending to be. Drop the mask, bleed the light, be the geode, cracked open, revealing the crystal that only grows in absolute dark. The world can squint. You were never meant to be dim.